The restaurant was called Luminar, and it was the kind of place where the silverware probably cost more than Sophia Chen's entire monthly rent. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm, golden glow over tables draped in cream-colored linens, and the quiet murmur of sophisticated conversation filled the air like expensive perfume. She felt entirely, completely out of place. Sophia smoothed down her navy blue dress for the 100th time, her palms damp with nervous sweat. It was her nicest dress, a simple A-line she'd bought on sale 3 years ago for a cousin's wedding. Next to the designer gowns and couture suits filling the dining room, she might as well have been wearing a paper bag. "You can do this," she whispered to herself, clutching her small purse like a lifeline. "It's just dinner, just one dinner." The blind date had been her best friend Rachel's idea. "He's perfect for you, Soph. He's a graphic designer, loves books, totally your type. Just give him a chance." Rachel had begged, pleaded, and ultimately worn her down with the kind of relentless enthusiasm only a best friend could deploy. So here she was, 20 minutes early because her anxiety wouldn't let her be fashionably late, standing in the entrance of a restaurant where a single appetizer probably cost what she spent on groceries for a week. The maitre d', a silver-haired man with the posture of a retired general, approached with a polite smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Good evening, madam. Do you have a reservation?" "Yes, under Marcus Reeves, for 2. Her voice came out smaller than she'd intended, almost a question rather than a statement. He consulted his leather-bound ledger with the kind of reverence usually reserved for ancient religious texts. "Ah, yes, Mr. Reeves called ahead. Your table is ready. This way, please." Sophia followed him through the maze of tables, acutely aware of the eyes that followed her. She felt like an imposter, a community college librarian who'd accidentally wandered into a billionaire's playground. The table was intimate, positioned near a floor-to-ceiling window that overlooked the glittering city skyline. It would have been romantic if her heart wasn't hammering like a trapped bird against her ribs. "Your server will be with you momentarily," the maitre d' said, pulling out her chair with practiced efficiency. "Would you care for water while you wait?" "Yes, please, thank you." As she settled into her seat, Sophia couldn't help but glance around the dining room. That's when she saw him. At the table directly adjacent to hers, separated only by a decorative screen of frosted glass that provided the illusion of privacy without completely blocking the view, sat a man who looked like he'd been carved from marble by an artist who specialized in impossible perfection. He was alone, dressed in a charcoal gray suit that fit him so perfectly it had to be custom-made. His dark hair was styled with the kind of effortless precision that suggested both an expensive barber and good genes. His jawline was sharp enough to cut glass, and even from her angle, she could see the intensity in his eyes as he stared at his phone. But it wasn't just his looks that caught her attention. It was the aura of power that surrounded him like an invisible force field. The way the servers approached his table with an extra measure of deference. The way other diners glanced in his direction with a mixture of curiosity and recognition. This was a man who owned rooms simply by existing in them. Sophia quickly looked away, feeling like she'd been caught staring at the sun. She pulled out her own phone, checking the time. 7:42 p.m. Marcus was 12 minutes late, but that was fine. Traffic in the city was always unpredictable. The server arrived with her water and a basket of artisan bread that looked like it belonged in a museum rather than on a table. "Good evening, miss. Can I start you with a cocktail or perhaps a glass of wine?" Sophia glanced at the wine list and felt her eyes widen at the prices. The cheapest bottle cost more than her car payment. "Just water for now, thank you. I'm waiting for someone." "Of course, please let me know if you need anything." As the server departed, Sophia tore off a small piece of bread and nibbled it, trying to calm her nerves. It was delicious, of course. Everything in this place was probably delicious and overpriced and intimidating. 7:50 p.m., 20 minutes late. She sent Marcus a text. "Hey, I'm here at the table. No rush, just wanted you to know I'm here." The emoji felt desperate even as she hit send. From the corner of her eye, she noticed the man at the adjacent table had put down his phone. He was now looking at the menu, but something about the set of his shoulders suggested he was just as aware of her presence as she was of his. "Stop it," she told herself. "He's not looking at you. Men like that don't look at women like you. He probably has a supermodel girlfriend who's running late from a photo shoot in Milan or something." 8:00 p.m., 30 minutes late. Sophia checked her phone again, no response to her text. She tried calling, it went straight to voicemail. A cold knot of anxiety began forming in her stomach. This wasn't just fashionably late, this was concerning. "Miss," the server had returned, his polite smile now tinged with something that looked uncomfortably like pity. "Would you like to order, or would you prefer to wait a bit longer for your companion?" "I'll wait," she said, forcing brightness into her voice. "He's probably just stuck in traffic." "Of course, take your time." But even as she said it, doubt crept in with icy fingers. She pulled up Marcus's social media profile on her phone, something she deliberately avoided doing before the date because Rachel had insisted on the element of surprise. His Instagram was public. The most recent post, uploaded 23 minutes ago, made her blood run cold. It was a photo of a stunning redhead in a cocktail dress, laughing at something off camera. The caption read, "When your ex shows up at your favorite bar and reminds you why some stories deserve a sequel, second chances worth it." The location tag showed a trendy wine bar on the other side of town. A wine bar that was decidedly not Luminar. Sophia stared at the post, the words blurring as humiliation crashed over her in waves. He wasn't late. He wasn't coming. He had stood her up for his ex-girlfriend and was bragging about it on social media while she sat here like an idiot waiting. She set the phone down carefully, afraid that if she moved too quickly, the fragile composure holding her together would shatter completely. 8:15 p.m., 45 minutes late, except he wasn't late, he simply wasn't coming. The server approached again, and this time the pity in his eyes was unmistakable. "Miss, perhaps." "I'd like the check, please," Sophia interrupted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Just for the bread and water." "Miss, the bread service is complimentary." "Please," she said, and hated how her voice cracked on the single word. "I'd just like to leave." "Of course, right away." As she waited for the server to return, Sophia became acutely aware that she was now the spectacle of the dining room. The woman who'd been stood up. The pathetic girl in the discount dress who thought she belonged here. Tears pricked at her eyes, hot and humiliating. She blinked them back furiously. She would not cry. Not here. Not in front of all these people who probably lunched with celebrities and vacationed in the Maldives. That's when she heard it. A voice from the adjacent table, low and smooth like aged whiskey, speaking with quiet authority. "Excuse me, Jean-Pierre." Sophia looked up to see the gorgeous man from the next table speaking to the maitre d', who had materialized at his side with the speed of someone responding to royalty. "Yes, Mr. Harrington." "The young woman at the table beside me," he said, and Sophia's heart stopped as she realized he was talking about her. "I believe she's been waiting quite some time for a companion who clearly lacks both manners and basic human decency." Jean-Pierre's expression remained diplomatically neutral, but his eyes flickered towards Sophia with understanding. "It seems to me," Mr. Harrington continued, his voice carrying just enough to be heard at her table, "that a woman of such obvious grace and patience deserves better than to dine alone after such disappointment. Would you please inform her that if she's amenable, I would consider it an honor if she would join me." Sophia's mouth fell open in shock. Jean-Pierre turned to her with a slight bow. "Miss Chen, Mr. Harrington requests the pleasure of your company at his table if you would be so kind." Every eye in the nearby section of the restaurant was now fixed on them. This was happening. This gorgeous, powerful stranger was asking her to join him for dinner in front of dozens of witnesses. Her first instinct was to refuse, to flee, to escape this humiliating nightmare, and never show her face here again. But then she caught his eye across the frosted glass divider. He was looking at her with something that wasn't pity. It was respect, perhaps even admiration. And beneath her embarrassment, a tiny spark of defiance ignited. Marcus had humiliated her, discarded her like she was worthless. But this stranger, this man who looked like he could have anyone in the world, was offering her a lifeline. More than that, he was offering her dignity. Sophia stood, smoothing her dress one final time. She lifted her chin and met Jean-Pierre's eyes. "Please tell Mr. Harrington that I would be delighted to accept his invitation." The walk from her table to his felt like crossing an ocean. Every step was watched, analyzed, judged by the elite crowd that filled Luminar's dining room. But Sophia kept her head high, her shoulders back, channeling every ounce of confidence she didn't actually feel. As she approached, Mr. Harrington stood, a gesture of old-fashioned courtesy that seemed both natural and unexpected. Up close, he was even more devastating. His eyes were a deep amber color, like cognac held up to candlelight, and they studied her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Thank you for joining me," he said, pulling out the chair across from his. His voice was even better up close, rich and cultured with a hint of something darker underneath. "I'm Ethan Harrington." "Sophia Chen?" She slid into the seat, hyper-aware of his proximity as he pushed the chair in behind her. "And thank you, you didn't have to do that." "No," he agreed, returning to his own seat. "I didn't have to, I wanted to." He signaled to their server, who appeared instantly. "Philippe, we'll have the tasting menu for 2 paired wines with each course. And please, start us with the Veuve Clicquot La Grande Dame 2012. Philippe nodded with enthusiasm. "Excellent choice, Mr. Harrington, right away." As the server departed, Sophia felt panic rising in her chest. "Wait, I can't. The tasting menu here costs." "Is not your concern," Ethan interrupted smoothly. "You're my guest. Please allow me this small gesture." "Small gesture?" Sophia let out a slightly hysterical laugh. "The tasting menu at Luminar costs $400 per person. I looked it up before I came here and had a minor panic attack." For the first time, a genuine smile crossed his face, transforming his severe features into something warmer, more human. "You researched the menu prices before your date? That's admirably thorough." "I like to know what I'm getting into," she admitted. "Although clearly my research skills don't extend to actually vetting the men I agree to meet." The smile faded, replaced by something colder. "The man who stood you up is a fool." "He's back with his ex-girlfriend," Sophia heard herself saying, then immediately regretted it. Why was she telling this stranger her humiliating story? "He posted about it on Instagram while I was sitting here waiting for him." Ethan's eyes darkened. "Then he's not just a fool, he's cruel. There's a difference." The champagne arrived in an ice bucket, presented with ceremony. Philippe poured 2 glasses of the golden liquid, the bubbles rising in elegant streams. "To unexpected evenings," Ethan said, raising his glass. Sophia touched her glass to his, the crystal making a perfect bell-like chime. "To unexpected evenings," she echoed. The champagne was like drinking liquid stars. Sophia had to consciously stop herself from making a sound of pleasure that would have been entirely inappropriate. "So," Ethan said, leaning back in his chair with the casual confidence of someone completely comfortable in his own skin. "Tell me, Sophia Chen, what does a woman who researches menu prices and agrees to blind dates at Luminar do with her life?" "I'm a librarian," she answered, then immediately worried it sounded boring. "At the Riverside Community College. I run the research department and help students with their papers." She waited for the dismissive look, the polite disinterest that usually followed when she told people about her job. Instead, Ethan's expression became more engaged. "A librarian," he repeated thoughtfully. "The guardian of knowledge, that's a noble profession." "You don't have to be polite," Sophia said, feeling defensive. "I know it's not glamorous. I'm sure you're used to dining with, I don't know, corporate executives and actresses and—" "People who bore me to tears with discussions of stock portfolios and their latest film projects," Ethan interrupted. "Yes, frequently." He took a sip of his champagne, his amber eyes never leaving her face. but a woman who helps students navigate the complexities of research and academic writing, who curates knowledge and makes it accessible. That's far more interesting than most conversations I'm subjected to. Sophia felt her cheeks warm. What do you do, Mr. Harrington? Ethan, please. Mr. Harrington is my father, and he's been dead for 5 years. I'm sorry for your loss. A shadow passed over his features. Don't be. He was a difficult man who built an empire and forgot to build relationships. He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. I run Harrington Global. We're a venture capital firm specializing in technology investments. Sophia's eyes widened. Even she, who paid minimal attention to business news, had heard of Harrington Global. They were one of the largest investment firms in the country, with a portfolio that included half the tech startups that had become household names. So you're very successful, she said lamely. I'm very wealthy, he corrected, his tone dry. Success is subjective. Wealth is merely numbers in accounts. The first course arrived. A delicate tartare of yellowfin tuna with avocado, mousse, and microgreens, presented like an edible work of art. Beautiful, Sophia breathed. It is, Ethan agreed, but he was looking at her, not the plate. Their eyes met, and something electric passed between them. Sophia looked away first, her heart hammering. This couldn't be real. Men like him didn't look at women like her that way. So, she said, desperately searching for safe conversation. Do you come to Billionaire often? The staff clearly knows you. My company has a standing reservation, he admitted. I use it for business dinners several times a week. Tonight was supposed to be dinner with a potential investor from Singapore. Was supposed to be. He canceled 3 hours ago, some excuse about jet lag. Ethan took a bite of the tuna, chewing thoughtfully. I almost canceled myself, but I'd already ordered the tasting menu, and it seemed a waste. So you were sitting here alone, having a $400 dinner by yourself. Sophia tried to imagine having that kind of money, that kind of casual attitude toward extravagance. She couldn't. I was, he confirmed, until I noticed a beautiful woman being stood up by an idiot, and I decided my evening could be salvaged after all. Beautiful, Sophia repeated skeptically. Right. His eyes sharpened. You don't believe me. I have mirrors, mister. Ethan, I'm not beautiful, I'm average, plain, even, especially compared to the women I saw walking in here tonight. Then your mirrors are liars, he said flatly. Or you've spent so much time being undervalued that you've started to believe the lie. The intensity in his voice made her look up. He was watching her with something fierce in his eyes, something that made her pulse quicken. You walked in here tonight, he continued, his voice low and deliberate, in a simple dress that probably didn't cost what some women here spend on shoes. You were nervous. I could see it in the way you kept smoothing your dress. But you held your head high. You were kind to the staff, and when you realized you'd been stood up, you didn't make a scene. You tried to leave quietly with dignity and tact. He leaned forward slightly. That kind of grace under pressure? That's rare. That's beautiful, far more so than any amount of designer clothing or professional makeup could ever achieve. Sophia's throat felt tight. No one had ever spoken to her like this, like she mattered, like she was worth seeing. I don't understand why you're doing this, she whispered. Why did you really invite me to join you? Ethan was quiet for a long moment, his fingers tracing the stem of his champagne flute. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer, more vulnerable than before. Because I've been sitting at tables like this for 10 years, making small talk with people who want something from me. My money, my connections, my name, and I've become very good at spotting phonies. He met her eyes. You're not a phony, Sophia, you're real, and I can't remember the last time I met someone real. The second course arrived, seared scallops with cauliflower puree and brown butter, but neither of them moved to eat immediately. I'm still real even without the tasting menu, Sophia pointed out, trying to lighten the moment. A small smile tugged at his lips. True, but I'm enjoying watching you experience it. You light up with each course like it's a gift. Because it is, she said simply. I could never afford this on my salary. This whole night is like, she gestured helplessly, like being in a fairy tale. Then let's make a deal, Ethan proposed. For tonight, let's both forget about reality. No talk of money or status or the world outside these walls. Let's just be two people having dinner. And when the night ends, Sophia asked. His expression turned enigmatic. When the night ends, we'll see what happens. No expectations, no promises, just possibility. Sophia considered this. She could walk away right now, thank him politely, and go home to her small apartment and her normal life. She'd have an incredible story to tell Rachel, and maybe a tiny bit of revenge satisfaction knowing that Marcus had missed out on her having dinner with a billionaire. Or she could stay. She could have this one magical evening, this brief moment of being someone else in someone else's world. Okay, she said, picking up her fork. Just tonight, just possibility. Ethan's smile was brilliant and genuine. Just tonight. They touched glasses again, sealing their temporary agreement. And as Sophia took the first bite of the most delicious scallop she'd ever tasted, she felt the last remnants of her humiliation melt away, replaced by something thrilling and terrifying and absolutely intoxicating. She had no idea that the man sitting across from her had just made a decision that would change both their lives forever. By the time dessert arrived, a deconstructed tiramisu with gold leaf that probably cost more than Sophia's grocery budget for a month. They had talked their way through 3 hours and 7 courses. The conversation had flowed with surprising ease, moving from books to travel to childhood memories to philosophical debates about the purpose of art. Sophia had learned that Ethan had a degree in classical literature before he'd followed his father into business. My one rebellion, he'd called it with a wry smile. That he'd been to 47 countries but had never been to a state fair. That he preferred whiskey to wine, thunderstorms to sunshine, and Dostoevsky to Tolstoy. And with each new revelation, Sophia found herself more drawn to him, more fascinated by the contrast between his public persona, the ruthless venture capitalist, and the thoughtful, surprisingly lonely man beneath. I have a confession, Ethan said as he finished his espresso. The restaurant had emptied around them, most of the other diners having left over the past hour. I haven't enjoyed an evening this much in longer than I can remember. That's sad, Sophia said before she could stop herself. Then, mortified, sorry, I didn't mean. No, you're right, he smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. It is sad. I've built a life that looks perfect from the outside, the company, the money, the lifestyle. But somewhere along the way, I forgot what it felt like to just talk to someone without an agenda. Everyone has an agenda with you, Sophia guessed. Everyone, he confirmed. Investors want my money, employees want promotions, women want the lifestyle or the status or the name Harrington on their future children. His expression turned bitter. My last girlfriend was photographed trying on engagement rings at Tiffany's while we were still dating. Her assistant leaked it to page 6. That's horrible. That's my life, he paused, seeming to make a decision. Which is why I want to make you a proposition. Sophia's stomach dropped. Here it comes, she thought. The billionaire version of want to come up and see my etchings. She'd been stupid to think this was anything more than a wealthy man's amusement. I can see your walls going up, Ethan observed. This isn't what you think. You don't know what I'm thinking. You're thinking I'm about to propositioning you for sex in exchange for an expensive dinner. Sophia's cheeks flamed. Am I wrong? Completely. He pulled out his phone, scrolling through something before turning it to face her. This is why I was actually supposed to have dinner tonight. The screen showed an email from someone named Victoria Blackwell, sent earlier that afternoon. The subject line read, Urgent Friday's Gala. Sophia skimmed the message. Something about Ethan needing a date for a charity gala, about his ex-girlfriend bringing her new fiancé, a business rival apparently, and about the optics of Ethan arriving alone suggesting he was still pining or unable to move on. Friday is the annual Harrington Foundation Gala, Ethan explained. We raise money for literacy programs and educational initiatives. It's also the single most photographed, gossiped about event in the city's social calendar. I still don't understand what this has to do with me. I need a date, he said simply. Someone who isn't looking for a relationship, who won't read too much into it, and who won't sell stories about me to tabloids afterward. And you think that's me because? Because you're real, he repeated his earlier observation. Because you have your own life and career. Because you researched menu prices before dinner, which tells me you're practical and grounded. He leaned forward. And because I watched you handle being stood up with grace and dignity. That kind of character can't be faked. Sophia stared at him. You want me to be your fake date to a charity gala? Not fake, ambiguous. He seemed to be choosing his words carefully. I want you to come as my guest. We'll spend the evening together, attend the event, be photographed, and in exchange, I'll make a donation to your library's name. How much of a donation? How much do you need? The question was asked so casually, like he was asking what flavor coffee she preferred. Sophia thought of the dozens of rejected grant applications, the constantly dwindling budget, the students who couldn't afford textbooks and relied on the library's reserves. We need $50,000 for our digital archive project, she heard herself say. But that's insane, I couldn't possibly. Done, Ethan interrupted. $50,000 to Riverside Community College Library, donated anonymously if you prefer, in exchange for one evening of your time. That's, Sophia's mind reeled. That's ridiculous. That's too much money for one date. It's a tax-deductible donation to a cause I actually believe in, he countered. The Harrington Foundation's entire mission is education and literacy. This aligns perfectly with our values. But why me? You could ask anyone. You could hire an actress or a model or... I could, he agreed. But they would spend the evening performing. You'll spend it being yourself. And honestly, Sophia, after 3 hours of conversation, I can't think of anyone I'd rather have beside me. It was a business proposition, Sophia told herself. It wasn't personal. He was offering her students, an extraordinary opportunity. All she had to do was get dressed up and attend a party. What exactly would this involve? She asked cautiously. Ethan's expression remained neutral, professional. I would send a car for you Friday evening at 6. You'd attend the gala as my guest. It's black tie, and I'd arrange for appropriate attire if needed. I'm not taking your money for a dress too, Sophia interrupted. He smiled slightly. Consider it a uniform for the job. You wouldn't be expected to provide your own tuxedo if you worked security. This is completely insane. Probably, he admitted, but is it a yes? Sophia thought of her students, of the young woman who'd cried in her office last week because she couldn't afford the textbook for her psychology class, of the digital archive that would make thousands of research materials accessible to students who'd never be able to afford the physical books. One evening, she said firmly. One event. I'm your guest at the gala. We spend the evening together and then we go back to our separate lives. Agreed. And $50,000 gets donated to the library's digital archive project, anonymously. Agreed. And this is just business, nothing personal. Something flickered in his amber eyes, something that looked almost like disappointment. But it was gone so quickly she might have imagined it. Just business, he confirmed, extending his hand across the table. Do we have a deal, Miss Chen? Sophia looked at his hand, strong, elegant, with long fingers that probably signed million-dollar contracts daily. This was crazy. She was a librarian from a modest background, and he was a billionaire venture capitalist. They existed in completely different worlds. But for $50,000, she could help her students, and it was just one evening. How complicated could it possibly get? She shook his hand. We have a deal, Mr. Harrington. His fingers closed around hers, warm and firm. Ethan, he corrected softly. If you're going to be my date, you should probably call me Ethan. Ethan, she repeated, and tried to ignore the flutter in her chest when he smiled at her. As they left the restaurant together, Sophia had no idea that the man beside her had just done something completely unprecedented in his carefully controlled life. For the first time in a decade, Ethan Harrington had followed an impulse. made a decision based on feeling rather than strategy. And he had absolutely no intention of letting Friday night be their last. Wednesday morning, Sophia arrived at work still feeling like she was walking through a dream. The previous evening felt surreal. The dinner, the conversation, the proposition. She'd barely slept, her mind racing with 1,000 questions and doubts. Was she really going to attend a Billionaire's charity gala? What had she been thinking? Her phone buzzed as she was unlocking her office door. An unknown number. "Good morning, Sophia. This is Ethan. A car will pick you up at noon today. We need to address the dress situation. A." She stared at the message, her heart rate accelerating. "I told you I don't need you to buy me a dress." His response was immediate. "And I told you to consider it a uniform. Noon. The car will be waiting outside your library. Don't make me come get you myself." The implied threat made her smile despite herself. She typed back, "That sounds like kidnapping. That sounds like ensuring my investment in education comes with appropriate presentation. See you at noon." She should refuse. She should put her foot down and insist on wearing something from her own closet. But even as she thought it, Sophia knew the truth. She didn't own anything appropriate for an event like the Harrington Foundation Gala. The photos she'd found online during her anxious midnight Googling had shown women in gowns that cost more than her car. At 11:58 a.m., Sophia stood on the library steps, clutching her purse and feeling ridiculous. A sleek black Mercedes pulled up precisely at noon, and a driver in a crisp suit stepped out. "Miss Chen, I'm James. Mr. Harrington sent me to collect you." "This is insane," Sophia muttered, but she got in the car. 20 minutes later, they pulled up in front of an exclusive boutique in the city's fashion district. The kind of place that didn't display prices and probably had a waiting list for appointments. Ethan was waiting outside, leaning against the building with his phone in hand. He was dressed more casually than at dinner, dark jeans, a black sweater, expensive shoes, but he still looked like he'd walked off a magazine cover. "You came," he said, something like relief in his voice. "Did you think I would? I thought you might decide this whole thing was crazy and block my number." "It is crazy," Sophia confirmed, "but I'm here." "Good," he gestured to the boutique door. "Shall we?" Inside, they were greeted by an elegant woman in her 50s with silver hair and impeccable style. "Mr. Harrington, so lovely to see you again, and this must be Miss Chen." "Sophia, this is Madame Rousseau. She's going to help you find something perfect for Friday." "I don't even know what I'm looking for," Sophia admitted, feeling overwhelmed by the racks of gorgeous gowns surrounding them. "Leave that to me, darling," Madame Rousseau said warmly. "But first, Mr. Harrington, you'll be staying." Ethan had already settled into a velvet chair with a perfect view of the fitting area. "Absolutely." "You're going to watch?" Sophia asked, mortified. "I'm going to ensure we find the right dress," he corrected. "This is my event. I have opinions." For the next 2 hours, Sophia was treated to the most surreal shopping experience of her life. Madame Rousseau brought out gown after gown, midnight blue silk, emerald green satin, ruby red chiffon. Each one was more beautiful and more expensive looking than the last. And Ethan critiqued each one with the focus of an art collector examining paintings. "Too safe," he said of a lovely but understated navy gown. "Wrong color for her skin tone." He vetoed an admittedly orange-tinted gold dress. "Better, but the cut doesn't do justice to her figure," was his assessment of a gorgeous but slightly boxy silver number. By the 10th dress, Sophia was exhausted and frustrated. "You're very picky." "I have discerning taste," he corrected, his amber eyes gleaming with amusement. "There's a difference." "You're enjoying this." "Immensely." He took a sip of the espresso Madame Rousseau had provided. "It's not often I get to play Henry Higgins." "I'm not Eliza Doolittle," Sophia protested. "No, you're much more interesting. She needed transformation. You just need the right frame for the masterpiece." Before Sophia could process that compliment, Madame Rousseau returned with one final option. "I was saving this," she said with a knowing smile. "I think it's the one." The gown was midnight blue, almost black, but with an underlying richness that caught the light. The neckline was elegant without being revealing, the waist cinched perfectly, and the skirt flowed like water. It was simple, sophisticated, and absolutely stunning. Sophia emerged from the fitting room and knew immediately, from the way Ethan's expression changed, that this was different. He stood slowly, his eyes traveling from her face down the length of the gown and back up again. When he finally spoke, his voice was rougher than usual. "That's the one." "You're sure?" Sophia asked, suddenly self-conscious under his intense gaze. "I'm sure." He turned to Madame Rousseau. "We'll take it and whatever accessories you recommend, shoes, jewelry, clutch, the complete ensemble." "But don't you want to know the price?" Sophia protested. Ethan finally tore his eyes away from her to look at Madame Rousseau. "Put it on my account." As Madame Rousseau went to make arrangements, Sophia walked over to where Ethan stood. "Thank you," she said softly. It's too much, but thank you." "You'll be photographed," he said, his tone matter of fact. "Those photos will be seen by thousands of people. You should feel confident." "Is that the only reason?" He looked at her for a long moment. "No," he admitted. "I also just wanted to see you in that dress." The honesty in his voice made her breath catch. This was supposed to be business, she reminded herself, just a transaction, but the way he was looking at her didn't feel like business. "Ethan, I need to ask you something." "Ask." "Why are you really doing this? The dress, the donation, all of it. You could have hired someone professional, an actress or a model who does this kind of thing all the time." He was quiet, his expression unreadable. Finally, "Can I show you something?" "Show me what?" "Where I'll be Friday afternoon before the gala. If you're free, I'd like you to see what the Harrington Foundation actually does." "I have worked." "Take the afternoon off, please." The please sounded like it didn't come easily to him. "I want you to understand why this matters to me." Sophia studied his face, trying to read his intentions. But there was something genuine in his request, something vulnerable in his eyes. "Okay," she agreed. "Friday afternoon." His smile was brilliant. "I'll pick you up at 2. As Sophia changed back into her regular clothes, she caught sight of herself in the fitting room mirror. The woman staring back at her looked different somehow, more confident, more alive. She was starting to realize that this arrangement was going to be far more complicated than she'd anticipated. And the most terrifying part, she was looking forward to Friday. Friday afternoon, Ethan's Mercedes pulled up outside the library at exactly 2 p.m. But instead of James driving, Ethan himself was behind the wheel of a different car, a sleek but understated Audi. "You drive yourself?" Sophia asked as she slid into the passenger seat. "Sometimes I like to pretend I'm a normal person," he said with a slight smile. "Buckle up." They drove through the city, heading away from the gleaming downtown skyscrapers toward a neighborhood Sophia knew well, a working-class area where many of her students lived. Ethan pulled up in front of what looked like a converted warehouse. A modest sign read, "Harrington Community Learning Center." "This is where you wanted to bring me." "This is where I spend every Friday afternoon," he said, opening his door. "Come on." Inside, the warehouse had been transformed into an educational haven. There were computer stations, reading areas, tutoring rooms, and a small library. And it was filled with people, kids doing homework, adults taking computer classes, elderly people in a book club. "Mr. Harrington," a teenage girl waved enthusiastically from one of the computer stations. "You came." "I never miss a Friday, Destiny," Ethan replied, his entire demeanor softening. "How's the college application coming?" "I finished the essay. Ms. Patricia helped me edit it." "That's fantastic. You'll have to show me." As Ethan moved through the space, Sophia watched in astonishment. He knew everyone's names. He asked specific questions about their projects, their goals, their progress. He wasn't the intimidating billionaire from the restaurant or the commanding presence from the boutique. He was warm, engaged, genuinely interested. "This is what the foundation actually does. he explained to Sophia as they walked through the space. We run 12 centers like this across the city. Free tutoring, computer access, literacy programs, college application help. For anyone who needs it, no questions asked. This is incredible, Sophia breathed, watching a volunteer help a woman with an adult literacy workbook. My mother grew up in poverty, Ethan said quietly. She was brilliant, but her family couldn't afford to send her to college. She taught herself to read using library books, got her GED at 25, and eventually became a teacher. He paused, his expression distant. She died when I was 15, but before she did, she made me promise that if I ever had the means, I would help people the way libraries and free education programs had helped her. That's why you agreed to donate to the library, Sophia realized. That's why I wanted you here, he corrected. The gala tonight, that's theater, performance. Rich people writing checks so they can feel good about themselves and see their names in the society pages. His amber eyes found hers. This is what actually matters. These people, these programs, the real work happening when cameras aren't around. Sophia felt something shift in her chest. She thought she had Ethan figured out, wealthy, privileged, playing games with charity as a prop for his social life. But this man, the one who spent Friday afternoons with students and remembered their college application essays, was real. Why don't more people know about this? She asked. Because I don't publicize it, he said simply. My father taught me that real charity doesn't need an audience. He was wrong about most things, but he was right about that. They spent the next hour there. Ethan introduced Sophia to the students, explained the programs, showed her the plans for expanding to more neighborhoods. He was passionate, articulate, and completely different from the controlled businessman she'd first met. As they were leaving, Destiny ran up to them. Mr. Harrington, wait, I wanted to ask, are you bringing a date to the gala tonight? Everyone's been wondering. Ethan glanced at Sophia, something playful in his eyes. I am actually. Destiny's eyes widened as she looked at Sophia. No way, are you his girlfriend? I'm his guest for the evening, Sophia said carefully. She's being modest, Ethan added. She runs the research department at Riverside Community College Library. She helps students just like you with their academic work. That's so cool, Destiny looked at Sophia with new respect. So you're like actually smart, not just some model or whatever. Sophia laughed. I promise I'm actually smart. As they walked back to the car, Sophia felt lighter than she had in days. This afternoon had changed something, had made the evening ahead feel less like a transaction and more like something else, something she wasn't quite ready to name. Thank you for showing me this, she said as Ethan started the car. Thank you for understanding why it matters. He pulled into traffic, then added casually, I need to tell you something about tonight. What? My ex-girlfriend, Miranda, will be there with her new fiancé, Derek Chen. Chen, Sophia repeated. Are we related? I doubt it. It's a common name. He navigated through a turn. But I need you to know that people will assume I brought you as a statement, that I'm showing her I've moved on. Have you? The question hung in the air. Finally, Ethan said, I thought I had, but honestly, I realized I never really loved Miranda. I loved the idea of her, the perfect girlfriend for my lifestyle, but we never had real conversations. We never challenged each other. It was all surface. He glanced at Sophia. These past few days, talking to you, spending time with you, it's made me realize what was missing. Sophia's heart hammered. Ethan. I know, he said quickly. This is business, just tonight like we agreed. I'm not trying to complicate things. But it was already complicated. Sophia could feel it in the way her pulse quickened when he looked at her, in the way she'd spent the last 2 days thinking about him, in the way this afternoon at the Learning Center had made her see him completely differently. I should get home and start getting ready, she said as they approached her neighborhood. James will pick you up at 6:30, Ethan confirmed. The gala starts at 7:30, but I want us to arrive fashionably late, makes a better entrance. He pulled up in front of her apartment building and turned to face her. Sophia, whatever happens tonight, whatever people say or assume or photograph, just remember this afternoon. Remember what's real. I will, she promised. She was halfway to her apartment door when she realized she was terrified. Not of the gala or the cameras or the wealthy crowd. She was terrified because somewhere between Monday night's humiliating blind date and Friday afternoon's revelation, she had started falling for Ethan Harrington. And she had no idea if he felt the same way, or if she was just another charity case in his carefully managed life. At exactly 6:30 p.m., James arrived in the Merceds. The drive to the grand ballroom took 20 minutes, which Sophia spent trying to calm her racing heart and failing spectacularly. The midnight blue gown fit perfectly. Her hair, styled by a professional Madame Rousseau had sent to her apartment, was swept up in an elegant updo. The diamond earrings on loan, she'd been assured multiple times, caught the light like captured stars. She looked like she belonged in this world. The reflection in her compact mirror showed someone confident, sophisticated, beautiful. She just wished she felt that way inside. The grand ballroom was ablaze with light. Red carpet stretched from the curb to the entrance, flanked by photographers and journalists. Sophia's stomach dropped as she saw the scene. "Don't worry, Miss Chen," James said kindly. "Mr. Harrington will be waiting inside. He doesn't do red carpet arrivals." That should have been reassuring. Instead, it meant Sophia would have to walk that gauntlet alone. She took a deep breath, channeled every ounce of courage she'd built teaching nervous freshmen how to do research, and stepped out of the car. The cameras started flashing immediately. Questions were shouted. "Who are you wearing? Are you here with someone? What's your name?" Sophia smiled, walked with her head high, and tried not to trip in the unfamiliar heels. It felt like miles, but finally she reached the entrance and the relative safety of the ballroom interior. And stopped dead. The space was breathtaking. Crystal chandeliers the size of small cars hung from the ceiling. Tables draped in cream and gold surrounded a central dance floor. A live orchestra played soft jazz, and everywhere she looked, beautiful people in beautiful clothes sparkled like jewels. "You made it." She turned to find Ethan beside her, and her breath caught. He wore a classic black tuxedo that fit him like it had been painted on. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his amber eyes warm as they took her in. "You look," he seemed to lose words, which Sophia found oddly reassuring. "Sophia, you look incredible." "So do you," she managed. He offered his arm, ready to face the lions. "Not even slightly." "Good honesty, that's what I need tonight." He leaned closer, his breath warm against her ear. "Just stay close to me. I'll handle everything else." They moved into the crowd, and Sophia immediately understood what he'd meant. Every few steps, someone stopped them, business associates, donors, socialites. Ethan introduced her each time with simple consistency. "This is Sophia Chen. She runs the research department at Riverside Community College." No elaboration, no explanation of their relationship, just her name and her work presented with quiet pride. "Ethan, darling." A woman in a stunning red gown approached, her smile dazzling and entirely fake. She was beautiful in the way magazine covers were beautiful, perfect but somehow plastic. "Miranda," Ethan said coolly, "you look well." "And you look," Miranda's eyes swept over Sophia with unconcealed assessment. "Accompanied, how novel." "Miranda, this is Sophia Chen. Sophia Miranda Hartwell, my ex-girlfriend." "Soon to be Miranda Chen," Miranda corrected, gesturing to the man beside her. "You remember Derek, don't you, darling?" Derek Chen was handsome in a polished, generic way. He shook Ethan's hand with obvious discomfort. "Harrington, good to see you." "Is it?" Ethan's tone was mild, but Sophia felt him tense beside her. Miranda's eyes focused on Sophia like a predator spotting prey. "So how did you two meet? I don't recognize you from our usual circles." "We met at a restaurant," Sophia said truthfully. "We had dinner." "How quaint," Miranda's smile sharpened. "And what do you do, Sophie?" "Sophia," Ethan corrected, his voice dropping to something dangerous. "Her name is Sophia." "Right, Sophia, what do you do?" "I'm a librarian." The words hung in the air. Miranda's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose. A librarian, how educational. It is, actually, Sophia replied, finding her courage. I help students navigate complex research, teach information literacy, and run a department that serves thousands of young people trying to better their lives through education. She met Miranda's eyes directly. What do you do, Miranda? For a split second, Miranda looked genuinely flustered. I serve on several charity boards. That's not a job, Sophia interrupted sweetly. That's volunteering, good for you. Ethan made a noise that might have been a suppressed laugh. Miranda's expression hardened. Derek, darling, didn't we need to say hello to the Worthingtons? As they walked away, Ethan turned to Sophia. That was amazing. I shouldn't have been rude. You weren't rude, you were honest. There's a difference. His eyes sparkled with admiration. She's been intimidating people for years with that routine. I've never seen anyone shut her down so elegantly. I think I made an enemy. You made an impression, he corrected. Much more important. The evening progressed like a dream. Dinner was served, another multi-course affair that Sophia was getting worryingly accustomed to. Speeches were made about literacy and education. The Harrington Foundation's work was praised and celebrated. And through it all, Ethan stayed by her side, his hand on the small of her back as they moved through the crowd. His quiet explanations of who was who and what mattered. His fierce protectiveness whenever someone was even slightly condescending. When the dancing started, he led her to the floor without asking. I should warn you, Sophia said as his hand settled on her waist. I'm not a great dancer. Lucky for you I am, he pulled her closer. Just follow my lead. They moved together and Sophia was surprised by how natural it felt. How right. His hand was warm through the fabric of her dress, his other hand holding hers gently but firmly. They fit together like they'd been doing this for years. Thank you for tonight, Ethan said softly. For being here, for being you. Thank you for showing me your world, Sophia replied. Both the glamorous part and the real part. Which do you prefer? The real part, always the real part. Something shifted in his expression. His hand tightened on her waist, pulling her infinitesimally closer. Sophia, I need to tell you something. Well, isn't this cozy? They turned to find Miranda standing at the edge of the dance floor, her expression venomous. And beside her, looking smug, was someone Sophia hadn't expected to see. Marcus, her blind date from Monday night. Sophie, Marcus said with false enthusiasm. Fancy seeing you here. You know each other. Miranda looked between them with growing delight. We were supposed to have dinner earlier this week, Marcus explained, addressing his comments to the small crowd that was gathering. But I had to cancel, emergency at work. Liar, Sophia thought. That's not exactly what happened, she said carefully. Oh, Miranda's eyes gleamed. Do tell. He stood me up, Sophia said flatly. While I was sitting at the restaurant waiting, he posted on Instagram about getting back together with his ex-girlfriend. Marcus's face reddened. I mean it was complicated. And now, Miranda interrupted, her voice carrying across the crowd. 5 days later, she's here as Ethan Harrington's date to the most exclusive event of the season, wearing a dress that costs more than most people's cars. How fortunate. The implication was clear. The watching crowd whispered. Sophia felt her cheeks flame with humiliation. That's enough, Ethan's voice cut through the noise like a blade. You're out of line, Miranda. Am I, or am I just saying what everyone's thinking, that this girl... Woman, Sophia interrupted, finding her voice. I'm a woman, not a girl. She turned to face the crowd, her heart hammering but her voice steady. Yes, I had a terrible blind date earlier this week. Yes, Ethan and I met at a restaurant that same night. And yes, I'm here now as his guest. She looked at Ethan, then back at the crowd. But I'm not here because I'm using him or trying to social climb or whatever story you're all creating in your heads. I'm here because he asked me, because he wanted someone real beside him instead of whatever performance all of you expect. How touching, Miranda sneered. It is touching, Sophia shot back. What's not touching is a grown woman trying to humiliate someone because she's jealous that her ex-boyfriend moved on. That's just sad. The crowd gasped. Miranda looked apoplectic. Marcus looked like he wanted to disappear. And Ethan looked at Sophia like she'd hung the moon. He took her hand. I think we're done here, he announced to the room. To Sophia quietly, let's go. They left the ballroom together, leaving a buzzing crowd and a furious Miranda in their wake. Outside in the blessed cool air, Sophia started to shake. I can't believe I just did that. I can, Ethan said. You're incredible. I probably just ruined your reputation. No, he corrected, tilting her chin up so she had to look at him. You defended both of us. You were brave and honest, and he stopped, his eyes searching her face. Sophia, this wasn't supposed to happen. What was? This, us? His thumb traced her cheekbone. I invited you tonight because I needed a date, because you were real and I was tired of fake. But somewhere between Monday and now, something changed. Ethan, I'm falling for you, he said simply. Maybe I have been since the moment I saw you smoothing your dress nervously at Billionaire. And I know this is complicated and insane, and we're from completely different worlds. Sophia kissed him. She didn't plan it, didn't overthink it. She just rose on her toes, wrapped her arms around his neck, and kissed him like her life depended on it. He responded immediately, his arms coming around her, pulling her against him. The kiss was everything, tender and desperate and real. More real than anything Sophia had felt in years. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Ethan rested his forehead against hers. Come home with me, he whispered. Not like that, I just don't want this night to end. Come have coffee, talk with me, let's figure out if this is real. Sophia knew she should say no. Should go home, process everything, be sensible. Instead, she said, yes. Because somewhere between a humiliating blind date and a confrontation at a charity gala, she'd fallen for the billionaire who chose her. And she wanted to see where that choice would lead.